Indonesian police say a boat carrying 65 asylum seekers has crashed onto a reef after being turned back by Australian authorities. Passengers on the boat included 54 Sri Lankans and 10 Bangladeshis, with women and children among them. The group told Indonesian police they were trying to reach New Zealand. This incident comes just days after Australia attended an emergency meeting in Bangkok on the regional migrant crisis. For more, we're joined by our Indonesia correspondent George Roberts. George, where are the asylum seekers now, and are they all safe?
Well, Oscar, we've just learned that the asylum seekers have now been transferred from Rote Island to the capital of West Timor, a town called Kupang, and they are being held in a makeshift immigration detention centre there under the watch of immigration authorities in a local hotel. So for now, they're all safe and well and being looked after by Indonesian authorities on the western part of Timor that is still part of Indonesia.
What's likely to happen to this group of asylum seekers?
Well, given that Indonesia has now decided, along with Thailand and Malaysia, to start taking asylum seekers and give them temporary protection for a year with the hope to resettle them, Indonesia is likely to take them in. Given the experience of previous boats and what's happened with the passengers who've come aboard after being turned back by Australia, they've been sometimes split up and put into different detention centres. There are about 16 immigration detention centres in Indonesia. So it's likely that once these people have been processed, they've been identified and have gone through the admin process with officials here, they will be taken into immigration detention. Those with young children or the families among those on board are normally put into community housing to avoid children having to be spending time in detention centres.
The Australian government is yet to confirm the incident, but you've reported on previous attempts to tow back asylum seeker boats, as it's claimed here. How is this incident different to what's happened in the past?
Well, in the past, we've seen a mixture of two things. One is Australian authorities either fixing up the people's current boat, the boat that they arrived in Australian waters and then making that ready to go back to Indonesia and then starting the long process. It can take days for a turn-back operation, and then taking them back in their own boat. And the other one is those special orange boats that the Australian government bought if the boat was not deemed seaworthy, the one they turned up in. They were sometimes piled into an orange boat, which has an engine, and then they were towed back towards Indonesia, and then at a certain point, given the coordinates for where they should head to in order to make landfall. In this scenario, according to what those on board have told Indonesian authorities, they were intercepted by an Australian customs ship. They were taken on board the customs ship, we don't know for how long, and then after a while they were transferred onto a separate blue and white wooden boat that was described as more seaworthy. They were then given petrol, life jackets, biscuits and dried food, fruit and other provisions, and then towed or escorted back to Indonesian waters in this wooden boat. So that's the first time we know of that Australian authorities have come up with a new wooden boat and piled them into a different wooden boat.
George, both Indonesia and Malaysia have pledged to no longer tow boats away from their shores in the wake of the migrant crisis. Is there any regional pressure for Australia to make the same undertaking?
Well, certainly Indonesia has expressed its disappointment in Australia, saying that it would not accept any of the Rohingya refugees who've turned up in those three countries, particularly Indonesia. Out of about 1,800 people who turned up as of last week, Indonesia had deemed that more than half of those, so 1,000, were Rohingya refugees, and the others were to be repatriated to Bangladesh as economic migrants. Indonesia has questioned Australia's commitment to the UN Refugee Convention and said that Australia has an obligation to try and resettle some of those people. We do know that Indonesia doesn't like Australia's policy of turning asylum seeker boats back to Indonesia, because Indonesia considers that it's a transit country for people trying to get to Australia, or in this case, trying to get to New Zealand. So they think that Australia should be part of a regional approach rather than doing turnbacks of its own volition. But Australia has that policy, is unlikely to waver on it, so pressure from Indonesia is unlikely to have any impact on that policy.
OK, George Roberts, thank you for the update.